What's good, John? I'm back recording in a public setting in Saudi Arabia right now in my hotel. And, I haven't done this in a while, so I'm kind of like spooked out. I'm like, what if someone walks by and stuff like that? But, yeah, got a new Hawaiian tee. Shout out to my cousin for that. Thank you, Mohsen Rehan. And then we also, I'm not tired. I'm wearing something called surma. I know most of you probably just don't even care or probably didn't even notice, but it's it's people might say if so girls or whatever, but in Islam it's sunnah, which is basically something that our prophet would do, that is like a good thing and following in his footsteps. So he would put this on, and it's called surma. So I have some on as well, and it has a little nice eyeshadow to it, I'd say. So yeah, that's why I have it on. But anyway, getting to the topic of the video, I wanted to talk about. It just left in my mind. I wanted to talk a little bit about how most of you probably thought of religion when you grew up or when you started growing up. And if you're anything like me, you were born into a religious household. And even if you weren't, this video is still going to give you a lot of perspective. So, here, let me hit you with this, right? So, let me know if you relate to this, John, okay? When you were growing up, right? Religion was had fascinating stories in it about prophets and things like that, especially if you're one of the Abrahamic religions, right? And the thing was, it was always very, very hard to believe sometimes. It was always hard to believe some of the stories. Not only that, but the biggest thing and the biggest factor that stopped you from believing in your religion as you grew older is not because of the religious teachings themselves or anything with the religion at all. It's because of the people that might have been teaching you of that religion, or the people that you were surrounded by, right? And in some case, it's like, why does that matter? It's because they set the tone and they set the example for that particular group of people or that religion. That is why it's very important. And that is why you could either grow up in religion and love it, absolutely love it, but then you're on the contrary as well, and you might absolutely hate it as well. But you haven't really told anyone because, if you don't follow the religion, then you're ostracized from your group, most likely your family and things of that nature as well. So it's very difficult, and it's not only the fact that you might not have a good examples, it's also the fact that some of those examples, right? Maybe they're your parents, maybe they're your friends, maybe they're people within the I don't know, the place of worship per se. But they basically, oh sorry if that was loud. Basically, religion almost felt as if people were pointing them, like, how would I say this? People were pointing the finger on you, and that it almost felt as if they were in charge of all moral authority, like they're the morality police basically, right? And any wrong move you made, they'd be watching you like hawks. And the thing that sucks about that is, like, as a kid, you lack a lot of understanding. And to some degree, you have to see the things from the parents' perspective. Is like, you're told to do some things because you're not going to understand them, but in the future, you will eventually. And because of that, you don't want to be able to regret anything that you didn't do in the past that was religious, right? So they're like, do it now. You might not understand it now, but you'll understand it later. So you can kind of see it from that perspective. But the problem is, if you do that in a really, really wrong way, it just comes off as very, very, I want to say, almost like you're almost like a dictator. You're almost like a dictator in your family. And it doesn't feel good because what I think it does is, instead of cultivating, this fly is pissing me off, instead of cultivating an understanding for the religion, what ends up happening is you end up following the religion because of either the social consequences or social consequences of not following the religion, or because you'll be punished in some manner. That's the only reason, and don't lie to yourself, okay? Because how do I know this? Because I was also in the same boat. Now, what is changing for me, okay? What's changing? And that's that I've put my foot down, and I've done that in a respectful manner. And I've basically said that, look, I want to follow religion, but I need to understand what is happening, okay? I need to understand it. And, we always talk about how people are born different with different abilities of thinking, different ways of thinking. So some people might be more spiritual and they just understand that this is God's word, so they'll follow God's word. But for others like me, you might be more logically orientated, right? And so you're thinking like, okay, what are the physiological effects of doing, for example, prayer in Islam, or what are some of the actual benefits and things like that, or what are you doing in more of like a, I guess, if you're trying to understand what's happening within the prayer, what's being said, like what is actually happening there, instead of just performing the action without knowing what's happening at all. And I found that to be particularly true when I was younger. I found that to be particularly true of the Quran when I was younger. I was like, this is lovely and it sounds great, but I don't understand a word of it, right? And it's particularly because, like, even though you should read the Quran in Arabic, it's very highly recommended you do, but I think understanding the translation for my kind of thinking is very, very important for me to understand why. So basically I was like, all right, let me put the foot down and talk about it and be like, look, I want to follow this in a true way, right? In the right way and with intention. So, but that actually means doing that and having the willingness to learn about the religion and not just being like, all right, this is something that's not going to help me at all. Because remember, this is self-improvement at the end of the day, right? So you have to think, okay, what can actually help me? And you might say, well, religion is just a bunch of spiritual mumbo jumbo. And it's like, no, that's what I thought too. But when you actually start looking into it, it's like, this is very, very complex. This is extremely complex. And so much so that when I hear scholars talking about it, I can't even fathom what is going on. Even if I take interest in it, my brain drains out immediately. It's like, these concepts are so difficult to understand at times, but I think that just takes time for you to, settle in and be able to learn about the religion, but you have to do that with intention, right? This can't be something that's forced upon you, because I think you'll go further from it if you're anything like me, because that's what happened to me. And now I think there's a huge need. Now you might say, well, what intention and what reasoning would I have to indulge in religion, right? And especially if it caused, I'm not going to say it caused, especially if the things that were associated with it caused me a lot of, I guess, negativity and distress because of a lack of understanding, or lack of part of my understanding, because, I'm no saint either within the situation, but also, in my opinion, the lack of the ability for the people around me to educate me in a manner that helped me understand what it is that I was doing. So I guess in some sense we're both at fault, but at the end of the day it becomes your responsibility, right? But again, right back to the reasoning, I digress. It's because I think in the West we're becoming a lot more lonely. We're becoming a lot more valueless. And it's because we're looking at I all the time and we're not looking at the greater good. And one of the ways you could do that is by purpose. We've talked about that, and doing something that would be beneficial to most. But there's also another aspect, which is the spirituality aspect. And I think when it comes to the Abrahamic religions, it's like you're trying to serve something that is greater than just yourself. right? Which also somehow progresses the common good. And that's what I'm getting out of religion. That's what I'm starting to see more and more. And now that I've done Umrah, mashallah, like I'm starting to understand Islam a lot better. And for you, that might be another religion, but I encourage you to go out and read about the religions, read about them, and read about them in a manner that is independent. Like you have to be able to distinguish and differentiate the people that almost made you feel as if they're a moral authority and a police within this religion. You have to differentiate those people from the actual religion itself, because then you could look at the religion as something that can actually help you and uplift you, rather than something that's causing you distress because of these people that claim they are like these that seem like they're saints on the outside and moral police, but a lot of them end up also being, well, hypocrites, frankly, because and I mean hypocrites in a very broad sense. I don't mean like, oh, they'll call you out on, for example, not doing a certain deed and then they don't do that exact deed. It's more so like they tell you to follow something as a part of the religion, but then they don't follow another part of the religion, so it just seems like a big contradiction. So then, because of the contradictions that they're making, because it's their personal choice to do so, you just associate that with the entire religious identity, like what the entire religion itself, right? So sometimes people can cause you to, mold your beliefs about religion in a manner that can be very, very damaging for you. And you might completely dismiss religion for that reason within the future, because you're like, well, they act like this is what they're doing. And that goes back to the example thing, right? You got to set an example. I don't like the idea of, and maybe I'm too naive to understand this, and that's always a possibility, but I don't like the idea of, preaching about it all the time and saying, look at how right I am and look at how wrong you are and look at how much of a, shiny pedestal I stand on because of my moral values compared to you. It's more like, how about you join me on something that could help you, and I still, even if I have the knowledge of that religion and has made me better, I still have the humility to be able to kind of grow and set an example, rather than being arrogant about my moral position. Like it's almost like a morality hierarchy of who's done the best. Like I don't want to say it like that, because in the eyes of God you have people that do that, but like, yeah, in the eyes of God, like some serve God more than others, right? But for me, it's more like trying to point the finger and be the moral police. And now I understand that I just have to distinguish between those people, find the examples that are actually worth following, and those tend to be the people that actually know the most about the religion as well. And along with that, I can find myself actually learning with a little bit of love and humility in my heart. You know what I mean? So I think it's just a lot better that way. But yeah, don't dismiss religion because some dickhead could not be the example, right? Or the shining example. So yeah, that's pretty much all I got for you. Peace. Take it easy.